Robbie, welcome back to Toronto.
It is always great to be back. Thank you.
Does it feel like home still?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. There's a thing that happens, a recognition thing, a familiar thing, something, and this is my old hood. There's no undoing that.
Is there still stuff you got to do, still stuff you want to see when you're here?
There is, well, sometimes they don't give me enough time to
Right.
really. But a while back, when I was actually revisiting some things for my book, I did go back to some of the areas where I used to live, and I went out to Scarborough Bluffs. I spent some time out there and some places downtown. We used to live just down Bloor Street a bit from Honest Ed's on the other side of the street.
Yeah, near Bathurst there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've gone by there and I was looking up at the windows and thinking, God, I looked out that window when I was a little kid and I had big dreams.
Yeah, and you really have lived most of those big dreams, and that's what I find so interesting about when I first got the book in my hands is that, ever since the band, you've done so much. You've recorded solo albums, a children's book. You were signing people to record labels, working with Nelly Furtado, composing for soundtracks. But now, in 2016, that's when you decide, or around now, you're going to write that book that we've been waiting for. Your story specifically when it comes to how you came up playing music and the band. Why now?
Well, I'd run out of excuses. No, I went through a process. I went through a process years ago because there was several people, not at the same time, but over a period of time, that had asked to write biographies on me, autobiographies. Authorized biographies.
Yeah. They want you to sign off on a biography that they write about you.
They wanted to do it, but they wanted to do it with my blessing and with my cooperation. So I tried this with a very reputable writer, wonderful man, and then he started writing, and you go and you talk into a tape recorder, and then he takes that and he starts to write it in a thing. And then I said, you know what? This isn't going to work. It doesn't feel true to me.
Right.
And he said, I completely understand. He said, it's got to feel, authentic to you. And then a while later, another guy came to me and I went through and he said, oh, no, I told him about my experience. He said, no, this is completely different. This is going to be amazing. You won't blah, blah, blah. I know this, I know that. So anyway, I tried it again, and I didn't feel right about it.
Didn't feel right, no.
And then someone else came. But anyway, I've gone through all of this stuff, and the conclusion was that these people can't tell my stories. I have to tell the story. And so I decided that I was going to walk through the fire.
What do you mean?
I was going to, because it's a lot of work. Some of it is quite painful.
Right.
Some of it, the process of doing it is hard a project that I've ever worked on in my life. It takes such dedication, such work. I wrote every word of this myself, longhand.
You didn't use a computer or a typewriter?
No. I wrote it longhand.
Wow.
And I wrote it, which I didn't realize I was doing. I wrote it, and it came out to like 850 pages. So then I had to edit it down to 500 pages.
Yeah, right.
Which is but I didn't realize it was 850 pages. Because it's longhand, you can't tell nothing, right? So anyway, but I went through the process, and I've never been through anything quite like this before, and there were times when I felt so good doing this. I felt like I felt like I was sharing and at the same time unloading a heavy weight off of me because I've
What's that weight?
carrying around all these stories
Yeah.
all my life.
Yeah.
There's too many of them. There's too many things. And it's a feeling. So in writing this book, when I was finished, I just felt like I had more pep in my step. I was lighter. But what it really comes down to is setting these stories free to me. And that's where the heaviness goes away, and there's a sense of freedom in that. And so all of that was good, but in writing it, a lot of hills and valleys. A lot of times when I thought, oh my God, I told that in a beautiful way, I think. And then the next day I'd write and I'd think, that's horrible. That's not what I mean to
Yeah,
say
that'll happen.
at all,
Sure,
at all.
that'll happen.
So I'd have to, and then I'd think, oh, geez, I don't know. So anyway, it puts you through something that I didn't see really coming at all. And going into it, not knowing if I could write an autobiography. I worked on this book. I co-wrote this book, Legends, Icons, and Rebels.
Yeah.
And then I wrote this book, Hiawatha and the Peacemaker.
But it's different to write about yourself.
Holy moly,
Yeah.
is it ever?
Yeah, it's different. And I think as a reader, when you come into this thing, to be honest, when I picked up the book, as a big fan of the band, as a big fan of yours, I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to get some of those little stories, of the making of the Last Waltz or the making of Stage Fright or, the meeting the boys. And that's all there. It's great. But man, there is stuff in this book that you do not see coming that has nothing to do with music. I don't want to talk about too many of them because I want people to find them in the book, but I'm hoping to bring a couple of them up. And one is that, so you're 14 years old. You find out that your father, the man you know as your father, is not your real father, not your father biologically, and that your real father was Jewish. He was killed before you were born in a hit and run. Like, I found when I picked up the book, I found it hard to imagine having my whole perception of who I am, of what my reality is, of what group in some ways I belong to. And I mean, your mom was a Mohawk from the Six Nations Reserve. Can you just tell me a little bit about that, like emotionally, what that must have been like in that moment to find out that really everything about you knew when you were 14 years old had changed?
Excuse me. Well, I was in shock.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was coming. I knew with Jim Robertson, who I thought and grew up with, I thought was my dad.
Your dad, yeah.
I knew that we weren't, somehow in sync in some way, but he was my dad. That was it. I, never crossed my mind otherwise. And so when my mother and him were splitting up, he had been abusive to her and to me. And she did not want to take this anymore. And she said, that's it. I'm gone. And she was very angry. And in her anger, she told me this, too. And so she says, sit down, I got something to tell you. She said, yeah, this guy here, your dad,
Yeah.
He's not your real dad.
Yeah.
He's not your father. And I was like, what? Well, who? What do you mean? What? I was everything. And she said, well, I just wanted to let you know that, but I'll tell you later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's a great
like,
cliffhanger for you.
What?
Yeah, right.
It was, it was insane, this thing. But very soon, I came to understand all the details of it, what was going on inside of me at that time, I very much feel like I was kind of in denial about a bit, you know. I didn't want this to hurt me. I wanted to think I can take it. Whatever comes up, whatever's next, whatever's around the corner, I'm ready. I wanted to feel that way.
And was it important to feel that way going forward? Like, I think when I read that about you, I thought, well, I wonder how that affected him from then on, from your business dealings, your relationship dealings, your music with the band. Do you feel like that changed you in some ways?
You know, I'm writing in this book from that point of view. I didn't write in this book from now. As I'm going through this story, I'm witnessing it then. So at the time, all I knew was whatever you bring at me, I'm going to have some kind of a thick skin, and you're not going to take me down. There was something to that. There was some kind of streetwise thing that was setting me up for things later on. But I don't really understand the depth of what that had. I just don't. I just dealt with it the best I could.
I think when you now think about the 1960s and mid-1960s, early 1970s, people of my generation tend to think of flower power, long hair, wool vests, bell bottoms. And when you read your book, you get the idea of what else was going on around then, especially in music. And one particular moment, which I don't think you'd expect if you're a fan of the band and you only know the music and you only know, say, the big pink stuff on, you haven't gone back and looked at the Hawks, was a moment where you and Levon decide to rob a poker game.
Right.
And and then you're all ready to do it, and I keep on, and every single moment I think, oh, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And then, oh, no, they're not going to get the guns. Oh, no, wait, they got the guns. Oh, they're not going to get in the car. Oh, wait, they got in the car. I mean, looking back now, as you said, you wrote this book from when you were in it. But sitting down and having the perspective to look back at it now, I mean, was that surprising to you now that it came to that things had gotten so bad?
Well, it was really dumb. It was like one of the worst decisions, and I couldn't believe there was a couple of things going on from what was happening in our lives and the people that surrounded us. There was a lot of thieves. There was a lot of gangsters.
Yeah.
There was a lot of underworld stuff. So many of our friends that were people that were not law-abiding citizens, right?
Yes.
So
safe to say, yeah.
Didn't, to Levon, it didn't seem that extreme. It seemed like we're just doing what any of us, our crowd, would do. And while it was happening, I thought, this, for many reasons, this is a bad idea. And he convinced me, and my loyalty and friendship stood up and said, if my partner wants me to do this, I'm gonna have to go there. And it was only by the grace of the Holy Spirit that something happened and prevented us from actually doing that. That could have been the ruination of our lives, of everything.
I mean, that's the question I had. Like, do you ever wonder what your life would have been like had that poker game not been canceled?
No. I don't even want to think about it.
There's a lot of moments like that, there's a lot of moments of
near misses.
Of what if, of busts, of and listen, I like I said, this book has like a pretty incredible story almost per page, but there's one in particular I hope you don't mind maybe telling us today, which is just maybe a taste of what happened at the Skyline Lounge in Fort Worth, in Texas. That to me is the one part that's been sticking with me.
Well, yeah. We pulled into a gig at a place that we'd never played before, and it was in Fort Worth, Texas. And when we pulled up to this place, you could tell something was very wrong. The place didn't have a roof on it. Not because they decided to build a place without a roof, because the roof had been blown off the place. And so they just decided to call it the Skyline Lounge. That was suspicious. So then we go for this gig. We set up, and Ronnie Hawkins is saying, "Oh, boys, I'm telling you, I don't know where this one's going."
Right. But this is with the Hawks, not with the band. This is pre the band. This is when you were still playing with Ronnie.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So we set up our equipment, and it's a very big place with a wide, long dance floor in the middle and lots of tables and chairs on either side. And then at the back of the place, there's like a bar back there or something. So anyway, we set up our equipment, and there's nobody in the place, right? I mean, we're getting ready to start playing, and we think, "Oh boy, this is a disaster," and I'm sure we were getting paid based on the crowds that were going to come too. So this was looking really dismal. But then a couple came in and sat on one side. Two couples. They sat over there on one side of the dance floor at a table. And then pretty soon another couple came in and sat on the other side, all right?
Yeah.
We're playing our first song, and I see this figure coming towards us from the back of the dance floor, coming towards us, moving and gyrating. And it was a one-arm go-go dancer that worked for the place. And she dances right up to the front of the bandstand, looks up at us like we're in show business together.
You and I are on the same level,
We
buddy.
are
Yeah.
in it together.
We are in this.
So it was like, so you think, I don't know, this is incredible. You can't believe this. So then she does like this shimmy dance over to one of the tables. So she's trying to get people up to dance. The motto is, if the more they dance, the more they drink. So, right, she goes over to the table. They're trying to not look at her. Then she goes over to the other table. Finally, one of the couples on one side gets up to dance. Mm-hmm. The other couple on the other side, she gets them up to dance too. Oh, yeah. So they're, dancing, and we're playing away in this huge venue. And all of a sudden, there's these two couples on the floor, and a fight breaks out between them.
Between the four people on the floor. Right.
We're like, what in the world? And one of the guys, pulls out a weapon and shoots the other guy in the face with tear gas, right? And so he starts screaming and falls to his knees.
Do you keep playing?
And we're playing away, and the wind blows the tear gas up to us, and we're all crying now. We got tears running down our face while these people are trying to, and they don't want to, they can't fight anymore and everything. Now it's us sobbing on the stage from this tear gas. Anyway, we had this week there. It was one of the weirdest places, the Twilight Zone. And so we finished up the gig there. There's a bunch more stuff that happened there. But anyway, just to cut to, so then we finished this place. We go on, we're playing other places. Maybe 3 months later or something, the owner of the club was a strange guy, and he always seemed to be tweaked on pills or something. And as we were there, business was picking up, so we got to know him a little bit more, and he was around. So anyway, months later, we think that's well in our past, and we're watching on television, and the owner of the club goes up and shoots Lee Harvey Oswald and kills him. This is Jack Ruby,
Jack
who
Ruby.
owned the club. And we thought, oh my God, we were playing in Jack Ruby's club in Fort Worth, Texas.
I want to point out that the QTV camera people are here, and both of them just eyes widened up as soon as you said that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the many. You know, you speak about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald. You also speak about the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr., of Robert Kennedy, and you say that, I mean, Big Pink came out just shortly after the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. And you write that music from Big Pink, quote, almost felt like a reflection of the sadness and disillusionment that hung low over the nation. You know, at a time when a lot of bands of your era were making music about peace and love and kind of psychedelia. What was inspiring you to kind of go against that, to not make that kind of music?
I don't think there was anything inspiring us to not do anything. We weren't interested in being trendy. We weren't interested in following whatever music was happening at that time. That just isn't who we were. And what we were doing, we were making music that was from all of the musicalities that we had gathered over the years. We'd already been together like 6 or 7 years before music from Big Pink came out. Mm-hmm. So we had paid our dues, we had woodshedded, we had gathered and gathered. And so in our music, and one of the things too, I guess you could say, in that record, is there is some kind of beautiful sadness in it. Because I always liked sad songs. Some of the greatest music is sad music, but it's beautiful too. And so there is some of that in there. And then when Bobby Kennedy got assassinated and Martin Luther King, it just dropped you to your knees of like, oh my God, what is happening? What is so wrong here? You know, everything, all the dreams, all of the things that people united, you know, wanted to be together in. And in fact, it did. It brought the youth of North America and in some places around the world, brought the youth really together. Because there had never been anything like the following year when they had the Woodstock Festival. And all of these events were really about stop the war, and we are together.
But you said you felt a bit strange at the Woodstock Festival because it did seem like this kind of hippie festival that you didn't necessarily align yourself with.
Well, that's what I was just saying. We weren't very trendy.
Right.
We weren't about the scene or anything. We were just doing something that was true to our musicality, and it somehow was reflective, whether you knew it or not, and it happened to be. It wasn't like we went into this saying, you know, if somebody gets assassinated, we'll be ready for it. You know what I mean? It was nothing like that. It was just the nature of the music, but it seemed to fit in to the heartbreak of the time, like it was meant to be.
I find it interesting that you said you guys were playing for like 6 or 7 years before you made music for Big Pink. You know, Stephen Van Zandt from Bruce Springsteen's band, Little Steven, he gave this speech a couple of years ago where he talked about he thinks that's really missing from modern music. That in his day and in your day, you would pick up a week, 2, 3 weeks at a time of doing cover songs, learning how to make people dance, learning how to play Bobby Blue Bland songs, learning how to play Gene Vincent songs, learning how to play Muddy Waters songs, and that made you ready to write your own music. Do you agree with him on that?
I do, and I Like a week ago in New York, Stephen interviewed me in front of an audience at a New York Public Library thing, an event they do there. And he talked about that kind of stuff then as well. I think, you got a woodshed. I think you've got to pay your dues. And that at some point, through that, you learn to tell the truth.
The truth.
Yes.
So that the truth being the most honest expression of what you're going to
Exactly.
give as an artist.
Exactly.
Robbie, this isn't the first book about the band that I've read. I read This Wheel's on Fire. I read Levon's book, This Wheel's on Fire, and it was with honesty. And this is difficult for me to say in some ways. It was critical of you in a lot of different ways. Comments about you and Scorsese, comments about you and Neil Diamond. And now you have a chance to write your own book about the band. When you were sitting down to write it, was that on your mind at all? Did that occur to you at all that Levon had written these things? Did it feel in some ways like you needed to set the record straight from your side?
No.
No?
Not in the least. I had some of the greatest times anybody will ever have walking this earth with Levon. And he was an amazing musician, an amazing guy. And something happened over time that he became bitter and angry. And I felt terrible about that, but I didn't know how to fix it. So I had to walk away. And the other guys in the band, they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Levon is like, he's on this thing and he can't let go of it. And it was upsetting to all of the guys towards the end, leading up to the Last Waltz. But I knew that there was something really so hurtful inside of him that but I knew that. I've never said anything over all of these years negative about Levon ever. He had a thing that was some kind of demon inside of him that he turned on everybody. He turned on the manager, he turned on the accountant, on the law. It just went on and on and on and on. His negativity, the things that he said eventually about me, was 10 years or more after the band no longer existed, or my participation in it existed, and and I was kind of like, oh, here we go.
It didn't catch you off guard?
I was sad to hear it, but I knew he had this thing that was eating him up, and if he was going to turn it on me, I had no control over that, but I still appreciated him. I still loved him, and that's all I can do with it. I have no bitterness.
And you're very gracious to him in the book, and you speak, like you said, you speak highly of him the entire book.
Yeah.
This week marks the 40th anniversary of The Last Waltz.
I know.
I watched. Not only did I watch, I don't know if you're going to be happy that this is online, but there's a raw video online, like the entire concert, the non Scorsese version, like a locked off camera in the back. And I got to
Oh,
watch.
you mean a black and white video
Yeah,
camera?
yeah.
Oh, that was Bill Graham at Winterland had a couple of video cameras running, all the time. I don't care what they do.
It's cool though, man. It's cool. Like I've seen the produced Last Waltz an awful lot.
He sent it to me after we did the concert. Bill Graham actually sent that to me.
The black and white full raw version
and
of
I
it.
watched some of it, but I thought, oh, geez, this is going to take up too much time. So I just watched a little bit of it, and and there is something about seeing an actual, record. What do you call it? Document of a thing.
Like the
you know?
record of the show, yeah.
Some kind of whatever you call that.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know.
but I
But
like
it doesn't bother me that it exists at all. I just can't watch it.
Man, I recommend it. I watched my favorite on that is Van Morrison doing Tooraloo Allura. That's an Irish lullaby.
Oh.
And I always hated when I had the record. I always hated that I couldn't watch it, because Caravan's in the Last Waltz, but Tooraloo Allura isn't on the Scorsese
Right.
video. There's something cool about watching that. About watching Caledonia, Muddy Do Caledonia.
Yeah?
Yeah. Do you still watch the Last Waltz, like the Scorsese version? Like when was? Have you seen it recently?
No.
Have you watched it since you did it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it comes on, for something or another. And I had to, I did a new mix of it some years ago. Yeah, there's been occasions where I had to, do some work on it. And I looked at it and I liked it.
When you look back on that time, and so I get to see the black and white footage, which is the closest I'll come to seeing the actual concert, but you lived it. I mean, just to close things up here today, and I thank you so much for your time. When you look back to that concert, which people like me who weren't alive when that concert took place have watched a number of times, and have learned all the songs, and I sat down and figured out "Such a Night," which is really hard to do. That's a hard song.
Yeah.
What memory, what image sticks out in your mind when you reflect on 40 years ago?
Well, it was such an array of visual amazement in all of it. I mean, I could go on for hours about that. But I was doing an interview with a really respected music journalist, and he was writing a thing, and he pointed out something to me that I never thought of. He says, "Okay, this movie, this occasion, happened 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Scorsese, boy, he knows how to make a movie. So he makes the movie of The Last Waltz 40 years ago. He said, is it not a phenomenon that in 40 years, nobody has stepped up and said, you see what they did there? Let's do that only better. Let's do it better than that." He said, lots of people have done some good, music, films and everything. Yeah, of course. But there's no Last Waltz. There's nothing in that league. He said, is that not a phenomenon? And I said, everything that I've ever done, I thought maybe this could be a great stepping stone for somebody else. Somebody younger comes along, says, oh, I see how you wrote that, or how you played that, or how you sang that, or how you did this. Whoa, I can do that. And I'm then going to even do it with more of this and more of that and take it somewhere above and beyond. I had never thought of, in 40 years, that nobody has really taken what Martin Scorsese and, of course, all the music people did in that to another level. And it just, it had never struck me before. But this guy pointed it out, and I just thought, somebody needs to step up.
Because I think musically it's there. Like, I think if you look at Wilco, or you look at Ryan Adams, or you look at Mumford & Sons, they're all very, very influenced by the band. Like your music, the entire roots rock genre, the entire genre of people who look like me.
No. There's many
but
groups that are influenced by the band.
But to contrast that, I mean, I know we're talking about Scorsese and The Last Waltz, but it must feel heartening to know that there's many, many bands that are so influenced by your music, more than most other artists I can think of.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and it has some sense of it that we were making some music that had a timeless quality to it. And it wasn't like, because a lot of stuff you would hear and you think, wow, that's kind of great. And then you listen to it a few months later and you think, did I really like that? That it does, that hasn't happened to it, and that it lifted some spirits and some musicalities and all that. that is great, and I'm really, really appreciative of all of that. This was just talking about
Oh,
this
of course, I know.
40th
I know.
anniversary
I just think it's
that
remarkable.
I thought, somebody needs to step up. Come on.
Well, you're hearing it now. Challenge. I like to thank you because I don't think I'd be able to get away with having a beard, long hair, and a jean jacket professionally if it wasn't for your band.
That's funny.
Robbie Robertson, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
This was fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.